And man, we back, and y'all know I've been following this Christina Formella case. I'm a little bit late, but there's been some recent updates in the last week. So I wanted to give you guys my reaction and my thoughts on what they recently hit her with. So let's get into it real quick, man. You already know what it is. Like and subscribe if you're new here. Appreciate y'all if y'all came back. Been following this case for a little while. So I'm having fun with it, man. I'm not the news, so it's a little bit different side of it. I try to keep things a little more lighthearted, but also, obviously it's a pretty serious situation, but let's get into it. Former Downers Grove South High School teacher facing 52 additional charges.
We have learned tonight a Downers Grove South High School teacher has submitted a letter of resignation as she is now indicted on 52 counts of sexually abusing and assaulting a student. Christina Formella was back in court.
Hold on. They let her resign? She hasn't been fired yet? That's a little crazy. I mean, I guess technically she's still being tried. She hasn't actually been convicted yet, but that's still kind of crazy.
Today. In March, Formella was charged with having sexual contact with a 15-year-old. Since then, prosecutors say they have uncovered more than 50 sexual incidents with a teen, mostly at the school. Formella was the student's soccer coach and tutor. She has pleaded not guilty and is expected back in court in August.
They really was. I said right off the bat when I first found out about this case, I'm like, she was really in love with this kid. I don't know why or what happened, how she fell in love, but like she genuinely liked this kid, and it seemed like it had been going on for a while. So I'm not that shocked. I mean, 52 times, I guess, over maybe a year or so, it sounds like the relationship was going on. That's about right. I mean, at the school is crazy. That's insane. A former West Suburban teacher accused of having inappropriate relationships with a student and is now facing 52 additional charges in connection with the case. The DuPage County State's Attorney Official Office said on Tuesday, Christina Formella, a 30-year-old former Downers Grove South High School teacher and soccer coach, appeared at a status hearing on Tuesday morning. The alleged victim, who was 15 years old at the time of the alleged abuse, and his parents went to Downers Grove Police Department to report Formella, who was a soccer coach and tutor, on March 15th. Formella originally appeared on March 17th to face a count of aggravated criminal sexual abuse, one count of criminal sexual assault, and one count of aggravated criminal sexual abuse. But she is now facing additional charges related to previously unknown sex abuse and assault of the student. The state's attorney office said the alleged abuse began in January 2023 and continued through August or September 2024. So yeah, I mean, dang, that's old. That's a little old. That's a year and a half, bro. They was really in a relationship, low key. Like during that time, Formella and the victim allegedly engaged in sexual acts at least 50 times, including at least 45 times at the school and multiple other times at her home. Bro, at her house is crazy. While this lady is married, Formella also allegedly sent the student text messages that were grooming in nature, the state attorney office said. Formella is now charged with additional 20 counts of criminal sexual assault, 20 counts of aggravated criminal sexual abuse, 6 counts of indecent solicitation of a child, and 6 counts of grooming. A judge rejected the state's request to deny Formella pre-trial release, but she is not allowed to go to the school or contact the victim or anyone. So they were trying to keep her ass locked up. The next court appearance is scheduled for August 4th. Let it go. It's getting juicier.
Was charged with 2 counts of sexual abuse and criminal sexual assault. This story came about when a now 17-year-old boy and his mom filed a report saying that the boy had sex with Formella when he was 15 years old in 2023 and he was one of her students. The boy told police that he and Formella had sex just once in her classroom during a tutoring session. Now again, there's much more to this alleged story now. The boy's mom found out about this alleged relationship when she ordered her son a new phone after his original phone had broke. She went into his iCloud account and found very graphic messages allegedly between Formella, the teacher, and her son. And here are a couple of those text messages. The woman's son, the victim in this case, wrote, quote, "I love you so much, mama." And an unknown number texted back, and that is who prosecutors say is the teacher, Christina Formella. She says, quote, "I love you so much, baby. Even though this morning was short, it was perfect." Formella also allegedly texted, "I loved having sex with you," and the teen responded allegedly, "I know, baby, I love it so much. It feels so good. It's so passionate. It's so intimate. It's so perfect." Police also looked at Formella's phone and allegedly found long entries in her notes section where she is talking about not just having sex with the student, but allegedly considering him her boyfriend. Quote, "I'm not upset. I'm not mad," Formella allegedly wrote. "I'm not any of that. I've just lost interest. I went back and screenshotted every single time that I said we should break up until after the wedding and after you graduated, and every single effing time you came back and convinced me it would be fine. I initiated every single breakup only for you to end things saying you couldn't get over it. You ruined us. I warned you we should have never started dating a long effing me ago, and you gaslit me and convinced me it was fine every single time, be that's who you are. We will never, ever be together again. I'm not a second choice. I'm the best thing you'll ever have, even with all of my mistakes. You, once again, waited and strung me along until it was convenient for you. It broke me last time. This time, it changed me. I'm not sad. I'm effing mad that I let a 16-year-old F word with me like that, and I made a promise to myself that I never will let any guy F word with me like that again. In March, police say Formella accused the teen of setting her up. She claimed that he took her phone during that tutoring session and wrote all of what we just went through when she wasn't looking. She says, sent text messages between the two phones to make it seem like they were talking about sex. She also claimed that she was the target because she's, quote, good looking. But then comes this week, and this story went to a whole new level. Formella was arraigned on 52 new charges. And this is what we know about what prosecutors said in court in DuPage County, Illinois. This is according to local outlet, the Daily Herald. Prosecutors said that Formella allegedly didn't just have sex with the student once, she had sexual activity at least 45 times with this student. They say that she had sex with the student not just at school, they had sex at her house, which isn't far from the school, and they allegedly did it during school hours. Also, this relationship allegedly started when the teen was 14 years old, not 15 like we first thought, and they reportedly had this contact for roughly 2 years, and that is way longer than what we first thought. So how do investigators know this? How did they find out these new details? Well, according to prosecutors, they had a second interview with the teenage victim. They also apparently have way more text messages than we first thought. Hundreds, if not thousands, between the two. And they say these text messages show that Formella even texted the teenager when she was with her husband in Italy. Now, social media shows that she and her husband got married in August of last year, 2024. And he does appear to be standing by his wife's side. He walked with her into the courthouse this week for her arraignment on these new charges. The teenager allegedly told law enforcement in the second interview that
you've been getting cheated on the whole time you've been married, bro. She's banging a 14-year-old. Get out of there, bro.
Sexual abuse.
Give her the karma that she deserves, my boy. Be better, fam. Jesus.
Use with Formella continued to September of 2024, and that would have been after Formella married her husband.
No, I know, but I really would prefer that my husband's with me.
Of course. Prosecutors say Formella told the boy that she didn't intend to marry her now husband because he was having an affair.
That hoodie is fire, though.
She was going to get millions of dollars if their marriage came to an end. Prosecutors have said that they don't believe her husband knew about the relationship that Formella allegedly had with this teenage victim. Here are the new charges Formella is facing. 20 counts of aggravated criminal sexual assault, 20 counts of aggravated criminal sex abuse, 6 counts of indecent solicitation of a child, and 6 counts of grooming.
I do have to put you in handcuffs and bring you to the police department. Just a donor
handcuffs.
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
I'm like willing to go with you.
I get it, yeah. Unfortunately, we have to do it that way.
A grand jury indicted Formella on these charges in May, but it just came to light this week when the new charges were unsealed. Formella is also still out on bail, and that's a point of debate because prosecutors tried to have her detained, but the judge opted for her to be put on GPS monitoring to stay away from the teenager and the school.
Nah, those hoodies are hard, bro. Those hoodies go crazy. I ain't gonna lie. Actually, that hoodie is sick. I know those boys were selling out after this, unfortunately, because America's psychopath.
Online. Join us now to talk more about this case is Ohio Special Prosecutor and former Deputy Attorney General Mark Weaver. Thank you for taking the time, as always, to join us on Law and Crime.
Jim Ware.
This story, it seemed to be taken to a new level with these new charges that Christina Formella is facing. How serious are these new charges? How does it compare to the charges he was facing previously?
Yeah, I was really surprised when they unsealed all these new counts. It appears as though this was not a one-off. This was many dozens of incidences of sex between this adult and this child in her house, at the school. Every one of these is enough to qualify for her to go to prison and certainly be a registered sex offender. Put them all together and she could spend the rest of her life in prison.
Hold on. Life is crazy though. I've been highly critical, but life, I don't know about that one. I don't know. 14, your brain is not fully developed, and she's definitely way ahead of him. But life seems crazy.
Because originally it was when she was arrested in April, and it was late March she was charged. I guess we learned about it in April. It happened at school. She argued that this teenager, who we thought was 15, but apparently this relationship allegedly went to when he was 14, that he had broken into her phone, he set her up, he was the one sending all these text messages. But you look at what prosecutors lay out, where apparently she was sending text messages, they say, when she was on vacation with her husband in Italy. How much does this new evidence carve into the defense that she apparently gave police when she was arrested?
I'm not here to say that prosecutors are always right. I am here to say that defendants come up with the most ridiculous excuses when they're confronted with clear evidence against them. And she must have been backpedaling in her head. How can I explain away this evidence that they're presenting in front of me? Now, she knows that she had other instances of sex with this child, but I guess she's hoping against hope that there won't be any other evidence of it. Let's remember, anybody who has a cell phone, anybody who uses iCloud or any other backup service forgets that nearly every interaction is preserved, protected, in the cloud, in the backups, easy to find. Prosecutions for this sort of crime 50 years ago, before you and I were around doing this sort of stuff, must have been much harder because it was all eyewitness stuff. He said, she said. But in an era where everything we do is logged,
documented,
and backed up to the cloud, evidence of these crimes is just so much easier to prove.
How damning is it for her defense, if you were her defense attorney, that she made those statements that this was a one-off, he set me up, when prosecutors now are laying out that they have a lot of evidence that this was far more than that?
What I've seen prosecuting cases like this is that there are certain kinds of offenders who think they can talk their way out of anything, which is usually pretty dumb. I'm not a defense lawyer, I prosecute, but it's usually why defense lawyers tell their clients to shut up, because they know that other evidence is coming. There's a process called discovery where each side gets to see the other side's evidence. So the defense lawyer wants to wait to see all the evidence against her, and then they can come up with whatever their defense is at trial. But I think she thought she was able to talk herself out of this, and she said some things that are going to come back to haunt her should this case go to trial.
Right. How big of a deal is it that this actually happened when this student allegedly was 14 years old compared to what we first thought, which was 15?
Yeah, these are all felonies, somewhat driven by the age, but also driven by the fact that the law puts special obligations on teachers to not have sexual interactions with their students. Even if he were older, it would still be a crime because we expect teachers to not do this. And so There are so many felonies here that the defense lawyer is almost certainly coming to the prosecutor and saying, please, can't we work this out in some way where this woman will be able to be free, maybe in her 50s or 60s. I think she's 30 now.
Yeah.
So it's unlikely any outcome, absent some crazy twist that we don't know about, it's unlikely that any outcome is going to result that won't keep her in prison until she's nearly a senior citizen.
And I want to talk a little.
I don't know. Bro. I don't know how I feel about that, bro. Like, damn. I don't know if I'm just like, I'm having remorse about the whole case now. If she spends the next 20 years of her life in prison, bro, I don't know how I feel about that, bro. I know people who's murdered people and is out of jail in 9. Took them off the face of the planet, bro, like for nothing other than petty hood beef, bro. I mean, if that guy is right and she does 20 years, or even if she gets 20 years at trial, man, or if she cops a plea to 20, bro, this case was kind of like he ha ha, and for a little bit, and it's like not he ha ha at all anymore. Like her life is over, bro. Like actually over.
A little bit about her bond because she's out right now. They did add with these new charges when she was arraigned on those earlier this week. She's wearing a GPS monitor. She can't go near the victim. There's a new software on her computer to track what she's doing online. But she's accused of having sex with a young teenager 45 times, sexual acts 45 times. It was in school. It was at her home. It was at her home during school hours.
They're
I mean,
dating.
this is not a small case of a teacher, and not that it's ever acceptable, but crossing the line once. I mean, these are serious charges, 6 counts of grooming she's facing. Why is she out on bond?
It's very troubling. This is a reminder that where you choose to live, you subject yourself to the laws of that state. And in Illinois, in 2023, they changed the law. There's no cash bond. A judge cannot order a cash bond for any defendant in any case. And the presumption is that the person should not be held pre-trial. This was passed after the summer of George Floyd and some of the hysterical allegations against law enforcement that were made following that. My concern is less that she's a threat to the public. I think that's unlikely. Don't get me wrong. She's a bad person and needs to go to prison for a long time. But I don't think that in her free time she's looking for 14-year-olds to go have sex with. The threat here is, since she's facing an essential life in prison sentence, the threat is she leaves. She cuts off the monitor. She heads to Central America. She's never heard from again. She has every incentive to flee. This judge said that there wasn't clear and convincing evidence to be able to detain her. I think the judge made a mistake.
How much does, because I know part of the reasoning for the judge in only adding the GPS monitor and the software to her computer was, you know, what's new in this case compared to when she was first arrested back in March? How much does the decision in March
she can buy a new computer
factor into whether you can take someone into pretrial confinement?
Software to her computer.
As opposed to looking at this, I mean, you look at it, I mean, this is, it's just shocking the new level that this story has been brought to with what prosecutors have. And I know the defense was saying, well, we already knew all this was already out there and all this and all that. I mean, I think that there's a pretty strong argument that this is a completely different story than what we were first dealing with when it was first uncovered back in April and March.
It's true. Every single instance of sex with this child is its own felony with 4 or 5 years in prison. Start adding them together. A judge doesn't have to run the sentences consecutively, but she could. But start adding them together, and it looks like a life sentence. This creates a strong likelihood of her fleeing from justice. This law is so pernicious. The notion that every crime is presumed to be one where the defendant is free the next day after he's arrested. Every crime has that presumption. and that the prosecutor, they call them state's attorneys in Illinois, has to file a special motion and ask for a special hearing in the hope that he can overcome by clear and convincing evidence that somehow this defendant has no other way of being kept, from fleeing other than prison. And the judge even lamented from the bench that the law was handcuffing her. It's a bad law. Illinoisans ought to petition their legislators to get it changed. And this is just the latest example of how it hurts people.
Because I know the other argument is, oh, she's, we have a GPS monitor on her, so we know that she's not going near the alleged victim. I think when you look at this, dozens of times that they've had some sort of sex act, according to prosecutors, there are these text messages, which if you've read those are over the top, to say the least, and explicit. She talked about not wanting to marry her husband and she would divorce him and get millions of dollars. So apparently she's got resources as well. Why not look at this and say that this is someone who does want to be close to this victim and should be in bars ahead of trial to protect the victim in this case?
I think that's a fair argument too. Again, most of us look at this from our own common sense perspective, like, wow, if that happened to me, I would never go contact the alleged victim. But she's a megalomaniac. Her statements suggest that she's a megalomaniac. Somebody who does these things already has impaired judgment. So you make a fair point. She's likely to...
What the fuck's a megalomaniac, bro? Hold on, chill out. Don't be hitting me with words I don't fucking know. What the fuck is that? A person who is obsessed with their own power. Narcissism can be defined as an exaggerated sense of self-love, while megalomania, on the other hand, is an exaggerated sense of self-worth based on delusion and power. I don't know, maybe she seems like a narcissist to me.
Will approach him because, quote unquote, they're in love, or because she'd like to shut him up, either or. That's one reason why she should be pretrial detained. The other one that I mentioned is she has a very high incentive to flee the country to get away from this potential life sentence.
She should definitely start running.
For as many charges as she's facing, these were 52 new charges. Just again, running through them, arraigned on 20 counts of aggravated criminal sexual assault. You have aggravated criminal sex abuse, indecent solicitation of a child, and then 6 counts of grooming. If this was to go to trial, how is this tried where you're able, as a prosecutor, to prove every single point and lay it out clearly for a jury?
Well, you have the electronic evidence, right? And so everyone focuses on the victim's testimony. That's certainly going to be the case. As a prosecutor, when I do sex cases, I would rather not have my child victims testify. They've already been abused by the offender, and I hate to re-victimize them by putting on the stand. We have ways of presenting the evidence without calling the victim. I think in this case, they're going to have to call him, but certainly the electronic evidence, how graphic it is, how specific it is. There's really no other explanation for what was going on other than these charges. I frankly will be shocked if this goes to trial. I think there will be some agreement of a plea agreement that will allow her to get out, again, as I said, maybe when she's in her 50s or 60s, and be a registered sex offender for the rest of her life. Prosecutors feel a strong influence to not put victims on the stand unnecessarily.
What's the timeline potentially for a deal to be reached or a trial in a case like this where, so she's been arraigned on these new counts yesterday, which is Tuesday at the time we're recording this. What does the timeline look like in this playing out?
Well, the next hearing is August 4th. I expect there'll be some potential plea negotiations between now and then. There's a speedy trial clock that the state has to meet, which means she has to be brought to trial within a certain amount of time to protect her speedy trial rights under the U.S. Constitution. But when the defense makes request for discovery or files any motion, sometimes that tolls or pauses that clock. Long story short, the defense lawyer is going to try to find a way to keep her from going to prison for life. That's the only way out, unless there's been some mistake in the police work, some corruption. We saw this in the Rust case with Alec Baldwin, where he shot that director and killed her. And he was pretty clearly at fault for doing it. but because there was some last minute allegation that the prosecution had been unfair, the
No
case was dismissed.
way.
So occasionally you have a bolt out of the blue where something goes wrong in a case, which is why prosecutors have to present their cases carefully. So presuming the prosecution has its case airtight, this will resolve in a plea agreement that will allow her to serve 25, 35 years before she gets out.
If she still goes with the my phone was hacked argument, if she was sending text messages from Italy, I presume prosecutors, you'd be able to get the location data of that to be able to show that it was not being sent from a student's classroom, but across the world.
Yeah, this goes back to my previous point that all the things we do with our phones are logged. Where we are, what browser we use, what time it was, who it was sent to. So she's going to be fighting all of that electronic evidence. She's going to be fighting the boy's story about what happened, and she's going to have to try to present this with a straight face. I don't think jurors are going to buy it. Not in DuPage County. DuPage County is exurban, suburban Chicago, a little more conservative jurisdiction than Cook County, which is where Chicago is. I'd be surprised if jurors in DuPage County bought that.
And then, Mark, you try these cases, and I've talked about a lot of cases on my show that are teachers that, and it's putting it lightly to say they cross the line, but they groom kids, they have sex with children, and that's what the allegations we're dealing with here. In your experience, why does this happen, and why does it seem to happen so often?
It's happening more than it probably did 50 or 75 years ago because teachers and students now interact outside of the school setting via social media and other digital means. So used to be, before all of this technology, you might bump into your teacher when you're out at the grocery store, right? But you'd be with your parents or whatever. And the notion of seeing your teacher outside of school is very unusual. Now, following your teacher on Instagram or texting her on Snapchat or other sort of digital means are so easy to do and so easy to be away from the gaze of parents. Parents would not know about it. And we're in an over-sexualized culture. One of the cases I prosecuted recently where a wrestling coach and his wife were having sex with many of the students, some as young as 13 on the wrestling coach. It was the wife having the sex and the husband putting her up to it. In that case, I filed a motion with the court asking for a long sentence.
He was letting the wrestling students cook him, bro. What the fuck? Bro, they be
and I pointed
out,
to the many instances in movies, TV shows, and songs where it's celebrated when a young boy has sex with a teacher. Somehow that's exciting, that's wonderful, that's something young boys should look up to. It's not. It's a sex crime. It's horrible. And our culture sadly celebrates a young boy having sex with a student in a way that we don't when the roles are reversed.
And then lastly, Mark, I think of that, what you just said, and it's kind of the elephant in the room, I think, in this story is if Christina Formella was 65 years old or a man and was accused of these types of crimes, would this case be prosecuted differently? I mean, she is a 30-year-old. You typically don't see, I feel like, cases like this where it's a little bit more shocking based on her background, her age, she's married, as opposed to being your stereotypical kind of creeper that we see in a lot of these stories.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be prosecuted differently, but it might be viewed differently, right? People do have a mental image of what a sexual predator looks like, and it's often well out of sync with the truth. But she's younger, she's attractive, the students must think she's cool, to have a student who's that age think that she was interested in him. That makes people view it a little differently. And she's quoted as saying somewhere that she can get away with things because she's attractive.
Yeah, man. So I don't know. 52 new charges for Christina Formella. I don't know. I've been having kind of been joking around and having like a laugh with this case so far. And as things are starting to get more tense, and to picture the fact that she's going to potentially spend the next 20 to 30 years of her life in jail, prison for that matter, it's a little bit crazy. I think I'm sympathetic to all people that go to prison because I do think people just make mistakes, and Sometimes they may regret them, sometimes they don't. But I think for the most part, they definitely do. And obviously, once they get caught, it kind of brings it to the forefront. There's definitely a certain amount of people out there who get caught and they're only sad that they got caught. But I think the majority of people just kind of do shit and don't realize, like, or just don't think it all the way through, and are kind of caught in a situation where if they got caught, they do a lot of jail time, but they pray they don't. And obviously she did. She got caught, and it's just one of those ones where I can't say the kid was old enough at 14 to make this decision. I definitely don't think he's old enough at that point to be making a decision about having sex with a 28-year-old woman, 29-year-old woman at that point. Obviously she would have had to have initiated this at least somewhat. I don't think he was being, I don't think at 14 most, at 16 maybe, but at 14 I just don't imagine he would be making advances at her. I just somehow she had to say something, some kind of hint that would make it okay for him to respond. And that's weird. That's definitely super weird. The entire case is super weird, but it's also, they were kind of in a relationship, and I don't know how I feel about it, man. I kind of feel like you had sex once, you had sex 45 times. I mean, what's really is each time's really a new case. Each time's really a new felony. Kind of makes me be like, I don't know. It kind of seems like it's all just one thing. I mean, she should definitely do some time, but putting her away until she's a senior citizen, and when he said that, it really struck a chord with me personally. Like, putting this lady away until she's 50 for this, I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know how I feel about it. I think a good amount of time, 5-6 years, I think that more than sends the message to her. I don't think she'd make this mistake again. And if she did, maybe I feel different. Maybe I feel different. Obviously, we don't want to send her back out in the public and, give her a chance to do this again. She probably should never be a teacher again, but I think she probably deserves another chance, man. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being soft on her because I think she's cute or whatever, but it's just, that's a tough one, man. That's a really tough one to say she should go away for the rest of her life. That's hard. I mean, maybe not even 20 years is not necessarily the rest of her life. She might be around that halfway point at 50. You know what I mean? A little over half, but that's just such a long time to do. I mean, obviously this prosecutor is pretty adamant that she should go to jail for a long, long time. And that's what prosecutors do. That's why they are prosecutors. That's kind of their shtick. So I wouldn't completely buy into his narrative just yet, but in the courtroom video of what's going on, but we'll know more August 4th. We'll have an idea of when this thing is going to go to trial. So I would say I'm excited, but excited's not the right word. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued, and I'm anxiously waiting for the trial to come along. So we'll see what comes of it, man. I'm definitely, this is one of those stories that has me a little captivated. So